Hello, we are here for another virtual speaker career series today, and I'd like to introduce Russell. Russell, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. I was just wondering if you could just introduce yourself for a little bit.
Yes, my name is Russell Moore. I live in Jacksonville, Florida, and I work as a regional admissions recruiter for the University of Alabama.
Yeah, I see the nice background right there. It's very, very wonderful. Um,
Right.
so you're a recruiter. Are you from Jacksonville originally?
I'm not. I grew up in Central Florida. I'm from Melbourne, and then I went to college in North Carolina. And many years ago, I wanted to come back to Florida and be closer to family, and that's where I've been for almost 20 years.
That's a lot of the stories I hear where they come back to Jacksonville to be close to family.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we're going to go right into it. So what did you do after high school? Did you go straight into work? Was it college?
For me, I knew that I always wanted to go to a four-year university. My father had gone to one, and that left a big impression with me. I actually ended up going to the same university that he attended, which some people do sometimes. But I knew that I was better suited to get an education at a four-year university versus what some people I knew did, which was to maybe go to a community college first or to a technical college to get a certification. There's so many different routes that you can go. I really liked the idea of going far away from home, taking classes, meeting a lot of different people, and taking in all of the fun things you can do at a large university, like going to the football and basketball games, getting involved in different student organizations, and all of that.
Absolutely. It is definitely a different experience going to school out of town or out of state and being like immersed.
Mhm.
I did the 2-year college thing at a community college and then went to UNF, commuted. So it's
Right.
definitely a different experience, and everybody needs different experiences. So what did you major in?
I started as a psychology major, but I ended up studying journalism, and they had several different areas of concentration you could focus on, and I chose public relations.
Public relations. So did you go after college? Did you work at all in that major, or are you doing anything now that kind of deals with that?
I still use everything, almost everything that I've learned from my journalism degree every day. Um, the writing experience that I got, the experience I had a really excellent copy editing professor who taught us how to write more concisely and how to really improve our grammar and structure of writing a story. So I learned to write news stories, but I could take that information and that knowledge and apply it to anything else that I was doing in work, whether it's putting a report together for my supervisors. Um, Sometimes I have also working in other admissions offices before Alabama. I'd even written and edited brochures and website copy also. And prior to this, my first job out of college, I started out as an admissions representative for a small private college in South Carolina. After that, I did work for a year and a half for a public relations firm. And I enjoyed aspects of it. I was published a few times in trade publications for what I was trained to write in. But ultimately, I missed higher education and working with students. And that's why I came full circle to do what I do now.
That's great. We know I love being able to use what you learn in college. I know a lot of people go in and they come out and they don't do anything with it. So
That's
it's
right.
great that we can. Did you decide journalism and public relations immediately? Like you knew that that's what you wanted to do, or did you kind of make a few decisions along the way?
I still had a copy several years after I had finished college. I was going through some old papers and saw that I still had a copy of the application I had submitted to where I attended. And one of my top three choices was journalism. So I ended up in something that really did interest me a good bit beforehand, even though it wasn't the original choice. But I remember how happy a large number of friends that I knew who were journalism majors were. And when I wasn't sure about whether I was going to continue with psychology or not, I ended up going to talk with several professors on campus, and I kept talking with a number of students about their experiences, and all those opinions helped sort of point me toward journalism as being a really good choice and something that that was it was a good way to use strengths that I already had in writing and research.
There you go. Taking stock of all of everything that's around you and kind of making those informative decisions is exactly what we want students today to do. I know too many people my age that went in knowing they were bullhardy and they wanted to do this, and then they got into the program and they completely did a full 180, and so it wastes a lot of time. And so that's an amazing thing to do. Okay, so your typical day, what did it used to look like and what does it look like now?
A typical day at my busiest time of the year, which was in the fall semester, when I was allowed to travel for the university, was I would get up around 5 to 6 a.m., just depending on how far I had to drive. Some mornings I might leave from Jacksonville. Some mornings I'd be in a hotel somewhere, and sometimes I would be in a hotel for an entire week. Ultimately, during the fall semester, I was usually in a hotel somewhere in Georgia or South Carolina, probably 6 weeks out of the semester. So I would wake up early, I would check emails to make sure that there wasn't an emergency, or perhaps that I wanted to make sure that I didn't find out at the last minute that somebody was coming unannounced to visit campus, so that I wouldn't have to make last minute arrangements for them. And if everything was clear for that, then I grab a quick breakfast and then go and visit 2 or 3 high schools. Some of them might be not that far apart in a town, but in a few cases, I might have to drive a total of a couple hours just to get to all those schools. And then I would have a break for an hour or two for lunch. I would get back, check emails, return phone calls from parents and students. And then many evenings, usually at 5 or 6 at night, there might be a college fair that would last for an hour and a half to 3 hours. So in a full day, in addition to speaking with maybe 3 to 5 guidance counselors, some days I might end up talking with anywhere from 50 to 200 prospective students so that they could ask me a variety of things about academic programs, requirements, and any other things that concern them to try to quell their anxiety about the process.
Okay, well, that's wonderful.
And,
it's a lot of travel, sounds like.
yes, and the travel ended March 11th, I think, was my last day traveling.
Mm-hmm.
Now I do a lot of interviews and appointment sessions with students and parents using Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
We might be on the phone. The phone calls are longer now because I have the luxury to speak longer to parents and students because I'm not at different high schools. It allows me to help individuals a lot more than before, whereas before you're more helping larger groups of people, but not getting as detailed or in depth. So there are a lot of things there on Zoom that we do. I've also partnered with 2 coworkers here in Florida where we have put together these sort of admitted student events so that students who are planning to come to the university can get together in a large group in Zoom, and we do a social icebreaker. We introduce everyone to each other, let them ask questions, and give them time to socialize. And there's just been a lot of emails and a lot of text messaging back and forth with students and parents who are still trying to find out whether or not we'll have fall semester classes in person or online, how the changes in our orientation will work because orientation is now online. There are a lot of little things, a lot of uncertainties that we spend a lot of time trying to answer questions or research for the families.
So do you find that this one-on-one approach is better, or do you think it needs some improvement? Do you prefer the old way?
I'm fine with any way we do it. I think that ultimately ultimately colleges and universities should do a mix of these things and offer as much of a variety of means for students and parents to contact us, because it's not that much more difficult. These online tools that we have today make things much easier than if we were trying this 10 years ago. The technology, I don't think, would quite be there. And text messaging has been wonderful because it allows us, we can now send out large numbers of text messages so that we sometimes are able to prevent, that we're sometimes able to answer questions before people even think of the question to ask, so that happens. Prior to this, I would often spend 1 or 2 days a week at a Starbucks or a Panera and make myself available for families to come after school, after sports practices were done, and to meet with me face to face. That has a big impact with a lot of people, but Zoom has been tremendous for us with the university as a substitute. So I think that we'll, for me at least in my region, I can't speak for others, but we'll continue to use Zoom, and in some cases, I think it will be preferred by family members who don't want to go out after rush hour traffic or at dinner time to meet with me after a long school day.
Do you find that you have more students just willing to talk to you about admissions if they're not like in state, say they're here or North Carolina? Do you find that this sort of opens up another avenue, another door for them?
It does make it more convenient for the students who are located further away in Savannah and Charleston, because sometimes I would be up there maybe 1 week out of the month and I may not be able to meet with them when it was convenient. And a phone call would substitute sometimes, but this has been really nice. Once we got past the first 10 days of uncertainty when everyone was trying to adjust to doing high school online or moving, if the parents had to move what they were doing from an office to an online setting, there wasn't a lot of demand for that. After that, and after our orientation sessions were announced to go online, we've had a lot more people request these appointments, and there's a lot more flexibility because I'm not in a car, that I can speak almost any time. So it's been fun.
That's good. That's always a positive thing to come out of these kinds of uncertain times.
Yeah.
Is there anything you hope people will learn out of this temporary change in daily life?
I always want people to put this in the proper perspective, and it might be easier for me because I grew up with an older family. My parents were born in the 1930s, and my dad is still alive, and he can talk about many of the things that he experienced as a child. I also had a grandmother who had a big part in my life for the first 13 years of my life, and she was born much earlier. And I heard stories about the Great Depression and about food rationing during World War II and other significant periods in history when oftentimes people had a lot of fear and concern about if their way of life would be permanently altered. And considering all of the resources, like these online resources that we have, the fact that there has been assistance provided at a number of levels and probably still will be, that we have, unlike after the immediate aftermath of a hurricane, that we have food and power and water. I think it's something that is a difficult adjustment for many people, but if they can put it in perspective of how much more difficult it could have been for people in a similar circumstance 100 years ago, that really it could be a lot worse, and that we have a lot to work with, and no matter how difficult the next 2 or 3 years will be, to try to take a long-term view and think, okay, we'll things will be better and we'll be back to normal. It may take several years, but we'll get there.
I wholeheartedly agree. Learning from past generations and how they have dealt with similar, if not the same, situations to what we're going through today, and sort of learning from that. I absolutely agree. What are some positive things that you've observed from this whole thing?
Mhm. I've met a lot of kind people here in my neighborhood in time. When you're stuck in your own place and you're working for 8 or 10 hours, you do want to get out a little bit. And it's great that we are allowed to get out and exercise, within reason, just to keep a distance from people. And so I do a lot of walking. Sometimes I'm walking twice a day before and after work hours. And I notice a lot of people now are getting reaccustomed to seeing someone face to face and waving at them, or just stopping to have a brief conversation. Through the university, we've had several students who returned home when they weren't allowed to come back to campus because of the coronavirus, and started their own volunteer efforts to assist others. There's a student who's from Chicago who, as soon as he moved back to Chicago for our extended spring break, he started a grocery delivery service for people who were older, or who could not leave their residence or were afraid to leave their residence because they might be at greater risk for having health problems. And seeing things like that have really been wonderful. And I think a lot of people have been very good about taking this in stride overall when I'm walking around, or if I have to make a short drive somewhere, like to a store. I see people have um, have been uh, have been very patient overall, and I think that for some people they may not realize that slowing down a little bit in life and not doing an hour-long commute to work every day, and having to be in the hustle and bustle of an office, or be as close to some others who may cause more stress and anxiety in their lives, has helped perhaps to give them a chance to breathe and to reflect, and to be more efficient at home if they're working from home. But I am very concerned for a number of other people who don't have the luxury of being able to work from home like I do. And I imagine starting in about a month or two that that's going to be much more difficult for them if they're not able to get back to work. So I hope that more people will continue to think of others, and to try to help each other out, even if it's just on their own street or in their own neighborhood. Every little bit will help.
Absolutely. I have also experienced people trying to relearn human contact almost, where we've been behind a
Yeah.
screen for so long that it's sort of we're like an alien species, reintroducing ourselves to our own kind. But it's a wonderful experience. I've also met more of my neighbors, and I recently moved to this neighborhood a couple of years ago. So it's a wonderful experience. And I agree that we should do our best to keep those who cannot work from home as safe as possible and for as long.
Yes.
Last question.
Mhm.
Why is it important to prepare financially for situations similar to what we are in currently?
For this, it's taken me a while over time, because I was affected job wise by the Great Recession, which was a little over a decade ago. It's really unprecedented to have two major economic events like this twice in anyone's lifetime. Um, Over the years, I told myself after the recession, I never want to face that situation again, to allow debt to mount up, and and to have that stress that can wear on people every day. And there are studies about how financial hardship and excessive debt can even have an effect on one's physical and mental health. So it's not easy for many people. It wasn't easy for me to spend time to save money, to be able to have several months of savings, sort of in case of emergency break glass situation. It took me the better part of almost 10 years to to be ready, and I'm not sure if what I've prepared for will be enough, but it will at least be a start. And excuse me, and and it will at least weather me through some of the difficult times. And there are a lot of people who have very good advice out there that you can see online or on some television programs or radio programs to teach people about just sort of the everyday small habits to help save a dollar or two here or there. And I started to listen to those people quite a bit. And and at times where I could perhaps spend more money on a new car, I would instead choose the more economical car, just to be able to get me around town and for university work. All those actions that you take, from the food you buy, whether you get that extra cup of coffee at a coffee shop in the morning, it all adds up over time. And if someone's not prepared now, it won't be too late, say a year or two from now, once people are starting to get back on their feet, to begin saving and to begin um, doing those daily habits, making it routine, so that hopefully, if there's another recession or some other unexpected issue that arises, you'll feel more confident that you can weather 3 or 6 months of whatever may come.
Absolutely. I feel everything starts with a choice, like you said, whether you get that extra cup of coffee or, anything, or the economical choice for a car. And I think right now we're sort of being forced to choose not to let go out, to spend money. So it's a very wonderful time for those who have the opportunity to do so, to save up their money and to start budgeting for things. So thank you so much, Russell, for
You're
being
welcome.
here. Thank you for sharing your story. It's greatly appreciated.
Yes, thanks for the time. I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.